So, am I allowed to say I told you so yet? Hey everyone, it's Spopes. Aside from brief moments of panic, I've been pretty consistent in my reporting that this is probably not the end for ESO or for ZOS. Ever since the news about the layoffs came out, we've all been in a state of semi-panic. But with key team members at ZOS finally breaking the silence, we are getting our first clear picture of the future of the game in the studio, and it's not nearly as bad as all the doomsayers were trying to get us to believe. In this video, I'm going to cover recent statements made by Jessica Folsom and Jason Barnes at the ESO Tavern, the follow-up post from ZOS Kevin, and we're also going to dive a little bit more deeply into the context surrounding the layoffs in the hopes of explaining why this is very likely not the end of the Elder Scrolls Online. Before we get into it, please do like, hype, and sub, and consider upgrading your support with a membership, a merch purchase, or a donation. This morning, it was nice to wake up to some actual good news for once. People were blowing me up on Discord and on YouTube about this post that was put on the ESO forums. So we're going to start by just reading this full post from Baratron. We'll cover ZOS Kevin's response and then get into the context. Some good news for a change. This is important. According to both Jason Barnes, the Associate Design Director, and Jessica Folsom, Associate Director of Community Management, ZeniMax Online Studios is now at the same size as it was when they made both Wrothgar and Summerset, which, as we know, are both highly acclaimed DLCs. So, while the layoffs are extremely upsetting for everyone involved, of course including players, this is not necessarily the end of new content or the game going into maintenance mode. Nick Giacomini, the game director, and Susan Kath, the studio executive producer, are specifically not at the ESO Tavern because they're working on the new roadmap of when content will be released. It really is not the end yet. Also, ZOS Amy and ZOS Kevin have been confirmed to still be at the studio. It's important to talk a little bit about what this all means before we move on. One of the most important implications here is we now have a good idea of how many staff are still at ZOS. There is some guesstimation to do here because I don't think there are any public numbers of how many staff the studio had when Wrothgar and Summerset were released, but we do know the game launched with about 150 staff members. Wrothgar and Summerset both came a couple years after that, so we can also assume with reasonable likelihood that the studio added at least some new staff members in that time. So my best guess here is there are at least 200 staff members left at ZOS. Maybe a little bit less, but more likely a little bit more. It's looking like our initial estimates of 200 to 250 staff members are about accurate. And just objectively, that is more than enough people to keep improving ESO and adding new content to it for years to come. Do keep in mind that one of the direct competitors of the Elder Scrolls Online, Guild Wars 2, has 250 staff spread across 3 different games. They are actively servicing Guild Wars Reforged, which just came out on mobile. They're continuing with Guild Wars 2, and they're even creating a brand new game, Guild Wars 3. So if ArenaNet can service 3 different games, including one they're currently building from the ground up, with roughly the same number of staff as ZOS has left over, honestly, there might still be more bloat to go at ZOS. Realistically, they probably only need 100 to 150 staff. Having 200 plus is definitely more than enough. How do we know that? Well, it's right here in the post. What was specifically confirmed is that ZOS still has a number of employees who made Wrothgar and Summerset. I'm not as huge of a fan of Wrothgar, but I do respect that it's really good. But Summerset is literally my favorite DLC of all time. If the studio made those DLCs with 150 to 250 staff, who knows what they can make in the future? And honestly, who knows how much the studio is held back by having too many cooks? In Asha Sharma's letter, which we're going to get to shortly, she did confirm that some Xbox Game Studios properties had 14 layers of management. While that's not confirmed to be the case for ZOS, I can definitely imagine that. The truth is that the studio had grown bloated and structurally inefficient, and it does not seem confirmed what many of us originally speculated, that these layoffs were removing dead weights, culling the herd, so to speak, to make the overall product healthier and more future-proofed. What is also important to note from this original post is that Nick Giacomini and Susan Kath forwent going to the ESO Tavern so they could double down in this time of crisis and get a new roadmap out there. Now, I do fully expect that the next year of ESO will be kind of light. The studio just essentially underwent the equivalent of major surgery. There is definitely some required recovery time after that. But past that point, having a leaner and more focused studio could definitely work to the game's advantage. In business in general, we have the 80-20 rule, which is where 20% of the staff generally do 80% of the work. So if we even have a reasonable number of those actually effective 20% left over, the game could actually thrive in a context of less middle management, less cross streams when trying to get projects done. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but this could be the beginning of the golden age of ESO, and it's possible the studio is simply being held back by being absurdly bloated. Again, the estimates have it there were 400 to 500 staff working on ESO specifically before the layoffs. That's because Project Blackbird is no longer a thing. So really what probably happened is a lot of people went to go work on Blackbird, then ZOS was nice to them and rehired them back onto ESO. But then you had massive redundancy. You had multiple people doing the same thing, getting in each other's way. Look at it this way. I know the World Cup is going on right now, and I hate calling it soccer, so we're going to say football, and I'm assuming you know what I mean. But would a football team actually do better on the field by having double the number of players? Or would they simply get in each other's way? A football pitch is only a certain size. If you have too many players crowding up that area, a smaller and more agile team will actually have the advantage. Bigger is not always better. The same rules that apply to the human body apply to organizations. When you're too heavy, when you're overweight, you're not as effective, both physically and mentally. When a company is overweight, the same principle applies. A few posts down the line, ZOS Kevin chimed in with a brief response. Just wanted to follow up on this as well. We are planning a revised roadmap. However, as noted above, Nick and Susan are working on timing and taking care of our team in what has been understandably a difficult week. The plan is still to deliver great content, and we will hopefully have an update soon. Just want to thank everyone for the kind words and concern for everyone at the studio and everyone impacted by layoffs. We know that everyone appreciates it. And then he leaves off by saying he's currently at the tavern, so there might be delays in responses. And interestingly, what he specifically responded to was a follow-up post to that earlier comment, where the user Eldevar was noting parallels between ZOS and ID Software, where ID said the studio is now the same size when they made the Doom 2016 reboot, which was a giant hit. It seems the strategy with Xbox is to get teams back to the size they were pre-COVID, when there was a higher spree that many companies partook of. And this poster brings up a great point, especially in the context of favors and dynamic encounters, which just came out. Still curious for that roadmap. With a smaller team, more focus is needed. So personally, I would scrap temporary experimental content first and expand the game with permanent and meaningful additions, while also focus on continuing the class reworks. Fluff that takes an enormous amount of engineering work and time, like crossplay, should be put on hold in favor of stuff all players benefit from. Yeah, we don't honestly need crossplay. We don't need another night market. We don't need the Sage's Vault. We don't need solo dungeons. What we do need is the new Skyrim Zone of Winterhold that should still be coming later this year. If they simply put everything on hold except Storms over Skyrim, and what certainly looks like to be a new Winterhold zone coming after it, I'd be perfectly happy. And with the size of the team and the focus they now probably have, that would make it even more likely that new zone would be as good as Summerset or Wrothgar. So again, I have not been perfect through this. We've all been through an emotional roller coaster as ESO fans, and in my case as a content creator, I've definitely had my crash out moments and my moments of panic. But overall, this tracks with what I've been saying the entire time. This is not the end of ZOS. This could actually be good for the game. We need to wait and see. But these initial statements from ZOS are pretty promising. Now, what I feel like is important to do at this juncture is get back to the origin of the layoffs. I know there are a lot of people out there who simply have not even read Asha Sharma's letter. People who literally just disregard her as an Indian woman with nothing interesting to say. But this statement she made about resetting Xbox is actually fascinating, and it will help us understand why the layoffs happened and what's likely to happen to Xbox properties in the future. So at the risk of going overly long, I'm going to read this thing in full. As a refresher, this came out on July 6th, which already seems like 2 months ago. This letter is titled Resetting Xbox. And for those who don't know, yes, ZOS is part of Xbox Game Studios. We are beginning the most significant restructure in Xbox history. After careful consideration, I've made the difficult decision to reduce our team by approximately 3,200 throughout FY27, so fiscal year 2027. This will include approximately 1,600 role eliminations today, and in addition, 4 studios will leave Xbox to new management. I recognize that a year-long restructuring creates additional challenges. However, it is not possible to make all the necessary changes in a single day. I want to be direct about the scale. I know this is painful. These changes will directly affect people who have poured their creativity into building Xbox. Many joined us through acquisitions, while others were recruited here, or sought us out because they love this industry and loved Xbox. Today's decisions do not reflect their talent or dedication. Now here's the critical part, and I do appreciate the clarity. Our business today is not healthy. We are operating at margins that are 3 to 10 times lower than comparable platform and publishing businesses. We entered Gen 9 with a smaller install base and a higher cost structure. To grow, we bet on Game Pass, multi-platform, and a broader portfolio of content. While those businesses have created meaningful value, they did not grow at the pace we expected. As that happened, our core business weakened. We added more teams, more investment, and more time, hoping for a better outcome. And now the industry is facing the most severe hardware crisis in its history. We must reset Xbox. This is probably the most important part of the whole letter, so it's worth taking a moment to unpack it. Basically, what they're saying is people just aren't buying Xboxes like they used to. Plus, it's costing more and more to produce the console. They decide to pivot by focusing heavily on Game Pass, multi-platform, and a broader portfolio of content, meaning exclusives and also just more games being produced by the studio overall. And she's admitting that basically they screwed up. These gambles have not paid off. And by investing more into these side projects, with the hope they would blow up, the core business of making consoles and games has tanked. So what they decide to do, just cutting through the corporate speak here, is throw money at the problem. Adding more teams, more investment, and more time, that equates to just throwing money at the problem and hoping it'll go away. But now they don't have the money to throw at it anymore, citing the most severe hardware crisis ever, which is ironically being largely produced by Microsoft with its push to AI. For those who've been living under a rock, the reason everything costs more in gaming these days is because all the chips, everything is going to AI. But whatever's causing it, the truth remains that Xbox must be reset. She goes on to say, first, we will reset our content portfolio. Since 2018, we have aggressively expanded our studio portfolio, while the number of games created each month across the industry now outpaces the last 10 years combined. We now find ourselves competing not only with the largest publishers, but also with smaller independent studios. It is neither possible nor desirable to own every great independent studio. We've also learned that we are not the best home for every type of studio. In a typical year, we lost 64 cents for every dollar we invested. That is absolutely wild. They've just been pouring money into this without any return. As we reset Xbox, we will help independent creators succeed by providing open development tools and audiences to realize their vision. So Compulsion Games and Double Fine Productions are going independent again. Ninja Theory and Undead Labs are being sold off. And Arcane, something weird is happening with it. Something arcane is happening with it. Management is beginning required consultation with its works council to review potential strategic options. Man, I'm pretty good at translating corporateese, but I have no idea what that means. We're also making reductions across other units, and in some cases, shifting investment to focus on higher priority projects. These changes vary in size across Activision, Bethesda ZeniMax, Blizzard, King, Mojang, and Xbox Game Studios. None of our first-party publicly announced games or projects are being canceled as part of these reductions. So she says right there that nothing made by Bethesda or ZeniMax is getting canceled. In addition, Mojang and King will now report directly to me. These two studios have increasingly become platforms and are our largest bi-monthly active players. They bring critical geographic, demographic, and differentiation to Xbox. Second, we will reset our platform. We know that great technology gets better when it gets simpler, not bigger. And this is a really critical part here. Today, in some parts of the company, work passes through as many as 14 layers of management. Our platform teams are 40% larger than they were at the start of this generation, even as our player base and playtime have declined. That complexity has slowed decisions, blurred accountability, and made it harder to deliver for players. As we reset Xbox, we will simplify. We will reduce management layers to no more than 5, and where possible, 3. We will deliver success through a flatter organization that is built around makers, player coaches, and directly responsible individuals who own key decisions and outcomes. And we will streamline how we work across our tools with a cleaner code base, shared services, and 50% reduced vendor spend. So yeah, this is absolutely nuts that there were ever 14 layers of management. Simplifying it down to no more than 5 definitely makes sense. Again, we don't know if ZOS specifically had 14 layers of management like that, but I would not be surprised if it was somewhere up there. One of the biggest factors there is blurred accountability. You can't really tell who's in charge of a project when there are 14 managers on that project. That kind of managerial bloat also definitely slows down decisions, making it harder to create better content. She's also saying they're resetting how they operate. We can skip through most of this, but she finishes up by saying history is full of companies that mistake longevity for inevitability. We will not be one of them. I have no idea what that means, but it's ominous and exciting, and I like it. All right, so put simply, what does this all mean for ZOS? Well, when you put these new statements in the context of what Asha Sharma said last week, or really it's just the beginning of this week, man, it has been a long week. But when you contextualize what ZOS has said with what Asha Sharma said, it does really indicate that ZOS is becoming a leaner machine, more capable of being adaptive and agile and making new content. Now, I do want to also address some of the main concerns I've heard, that it definitely was not just middle management that was cut. And that's true. There were a lot of creative people who were let go as well. Perhaps most notably the creators of Tan Lauren. And I'll just leave that there. But also people who have been with either ZeniMax or Bethesda for a very long time, including the mastermind behind the Khajiit and Argonian races, which again, I'm just kind of going to leave that there. But yeah, a lot of creative people have been let go, not just middle managers. Yet at the same time, we don't know how much of an effect that will have on the studio. Just because people were at one point really key to ZOS or ESO does not mean they're pulling their own weight now. And just because people have produced a lot of important stuff in the past does not mean they're essential for the future of ESO. Was every layoff perfectly targeted? Did every single person who was laid off have to go? I honestly have no idea. But what I do know is that ZOS still has the employees it needs to produce amazing content. They have the same number of employees as they had for Summerset and Wrothgar. And the point is that Xbox Game Studios is simply not profitable, not in its current configuration. It doesn't matter that ESO is profitable. It's part of a larger organization. So they have to cut costs wherever they can. And if ESO is profitable, if it is successful, it's even more important to cut costs there, because then it can be even more successful with less overhead, less bloat, less managerial overcomplexity. And lastly, I do want to touch on what I've heard people saying. This is just like what happened with New World, just like what happened with Destiny. And in both cases, it's not all true. And let me explain why. New World was a failure from the beginning. It suffered from extreme player volatility. It would peak to 50K players at some times, but go back to 5,000 2 weeks later. It was also a wholly owned property from the beginning of Amazon Game Studios. So when Amazon Game Studios started to decline, there was no underlying organization that New World could rally around. It never had a good monetization model. It was literally never profitable. It always operated at a loss. And in a lot of ways, New World was just not really that good of a game. It was good in some ways, but it lacked depth and complexity. Now, with Destiny, Bungie fell for the trap that ZOS narrowly avoided. They invested heavily in Marathon, which has essentially been a flop, while letting Destiny go to pasture. The sheer levels of incompetence at Bungie are legendary. They made so many bad decisions for so long. Sony bet on them so heavily with so little actual payout that it's no wonder that what happened to Destiny did happen. Now, I'm not saying I can all guarantee that ESO has a bright future. I'm just saying that it is not like New World or Destiny. It is not in the same situation. And we'll just have to wait and see what does actually happen. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. We've received some very promising news from ZOS, and it was also important at this juncture to contextualize that with why the layoffs at Xbox happened overall. I hope this helped everybody see the situation with more clarity. Like I said, I have not been immune to the doomerism and the panic, but the more I look at this situation, the more I do see a bright future for ZOS. In the comments, do let us know what you think about this, whether you think this is positive news, whether you think ESO is still doomed. Do share all your thoughts in the comments. And before you go, please do like, hype, and subscribe, and consider supporting the channel one step further by becoming a member of the Spopes Army. I keep plans affordable, but I give out great perks. You can also show off your love of Spopes to the world with my merch. There's some merch listed below the video, and you can go to my Fourth Wall site for a full catalog. Also in Fourth Wall, you can leave a donation. You can also donate here on YouTube in the form of super thanks. I am so grateful for all your support, but I'm even more grateful to God. So we're going to finish up as always with a prayer to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Lord Jesus, thank you for this news we received today. Thank you for ESO and for ZOS. Please do be with the whole studio as they navigate these challenging times. Do be with everyone at the tavern. Let it be a great and joyous gathering of fans and developers. Lord, I thank you for my community. I thank you for the ability to make this video today, for the breath in my lungs. Lord, I do give you all glory for this video and for my channel. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Thanks for watching until the end, everyone. Do leave your thoughts in the comments below. And before you go, please do also like, hype, and subscribe. And when you do subscribe, turn on notifications, because I'll be back soon with new content.